Welcome back to another episode of Big T and Blake. I should say Millertown first. I shouldn't have Blake. So we're here today. It's a beautiful Monday, and we're excited to have our good friend Sam Schwartzstein on with us today. Sam, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's been a long time since we were at your house eating burgers.
Oh man, was that great or what?
Yeah.
We'll talk about a little bit about that. But you know, Sam, you're out in Cali today, right?
California right now, yep.
I picture you as a Pebble Beach kind of guy. Is that true or not?
No. The shoulder injuries don't let me get on the golf course that much. So I try to stay off the course right now.
So you like in Palo Alto? Or?
Yeah, I'm in Palo Alto.
Okay. Well, just so everybody knows who you are, Sam, we first came across each other, I guess, about 4 or 5 years ago now, when you were involved with the XFL. And just to give everybody a little background about Sam. Sam is from Dallas, Texas, went to South Lake Carroll High School, the hotbed of football in Dallas, played for the Dragons, right? Now, was Coach Dodge your coach?
Coach Dodge was my coach for my first 3 years, and then Hal Lawson was my coach my last year.
You know, Coach Dodge left there and at some point went to North Texas.
Yeah.
So his first year at North Texas was my last year to officiate, and I met him. I worked with his games at North Texas. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he left
him.
Carroll my junior year for North Texas.
Right. So I met him, and he seemed like a good guy. But from there, you matriculated to Stanford, right? Played football, and I've seen pictures of you. You're a beast, man.
I've lost about 70 pounds since then. Yeah.
Center,
and had a hair color change too.
Did have a hair color change. I used to be a blonde, but now I'm back to my natural roots. Yeah, in high school we used to dye our hair blonde, so for the playoffs. So I had a terrible look. Don't Google me.
So you also played with Luck.
Mm-hmm.
So he was your quarterback. How was that snapping him?
I mean, you should ask him how it was taking snaps from me. You know, that's really the more impressive thing is that he got to play with me because you know he left to go be a millionaire, and I stayed one more year, and I became a Rose Bowl champion. So you know, he's a millionaire, I'm a champion. So we all make choices in life, but you know that's the choice I made.
Now, when you finished at Stanford, did you have any aspirations of playing in the NFL, or how did that work out?
I did. I had aspirations. I thought I was going to get drafted. I was 2-year starter at center, captain of the Rose Bowl championship team for Stanford. I just had a ton of injuries, so I was a red flag for a lot of teams. And I had a rookie mini camp with the Chargers. I had the best 3 days of football I ever played in my life. I knew the playbook inside and out, and they cut me. And I said, "Okay, this is done." I was working on my master's at the time. So I went back to school and just finished up and was like, you know what, I can't keep this weight on. I was 307 pounds. I was way too big. I was like, let me drop the weight and just use my degree and kind of move forward in life.
And haven't looked back since, and it seems to be working out for you.
Yeah.
So that's good. So tell us where you started in your professional career, after you decided to drop football and move on with your professional life. Where did that take you?
Yeah, so in Silicon Valley, everything's about building products, and Facebook had gone public while I was in college, and Twitter was started while I was in college, and so the tech boom, we know now, guys on my freshman dorm and started Snapchat. My buddy was the first engineer of Snapchat, so that kind of tech bug was part of my what I wanted to do. I wanted to be part of that industry. I'd interned at this company called Chegg, which is textbook rental and online services company. And so I'd interned there for 3 years. I really loved it. I loved the CEO. I loved the management team. So I went and joined there. You look at the different things that they can do to help students, and that's what I was really passionate about. So I did a lot of product development while I was there. did sales while I was there, marketing. They let me kind of float between different roles to kind of learn different parts of the business, which ultimately made me, really excited to be able to join the XFL when I had the opportunity to, because I had seen so many different parts of the business, but really focused on that product development part as well.
Well, Blake, I know you were involved in a little bit the XFL. What questions you have for Sam about how he, got to us?
Well, yeah, first,
Where,
talk about how, so you were working at Czech. How did you go into the XFL? I know obviously some relationships might have helped that,
right,
for sure.
Yeah. So
how did that kind of transpire?
Yeah, Oliver Luck was announced the commissioner of the XFL, and Andrew his son was my roommate in college. Oliver and I had been going to games together for, at that time, probably 7 years, to Andrew's games in Indianapolis, and we would complain about two things. Texas football, because as Texans, you complain about Texas football regardless of you went there. And then, what was wrong with football and what we would do to fix it. And so it was kind of serendipity when Oliver got the job at the XFL. He called me and said, "Hey, Vince wants to change the game of football, but no one's ever done it with a process. Why don't you do what you do in Silicon Valley for product development, but do it for our game rules?" And so I said, "Sure, this is a dream job. This is what I've always wanted to do." And so I got the opportunity to head over to the XFL. And one of the big things that we were going to do differently is kind of take that, again, product development mindset. We were going to do research focused, then data driven, and then everything tested. So we had an expert component. We're going to ask people what we could do to change about the game. We're going to have data, so we're going to back every single decision by a metric, and then we're going to test every single rule. And so I've been working through this process, and the people who before me that joined or that were at the XFL that built a model out, they had way too much. They probably had $4 million devoted to testing rules, but they didn't know what they're going to do, and they didn't know how they're going to do it. They just said, "Let's throw a blanket number in there." And so Oliver had relationships with the NCAA and the NJCAA. And so I was like, "Hey, man, we need to test these rules because we need to have something before we hire any coaches. I want to be able to show coaches that we have something." And so he called the head of the NJCAA, and he said, "Yeah, just give these two schools $10,000 and give the NJCAA $10,000, and we can do it." So that was when I saw a budget of $4 million, I'm like, "Okay, I can do this over 3 days for $30,000. That sounds like a plan to me." So when we got in relationship with Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College and what was it? Pearl River Community College. Yeah, and the head of, and we're looking for officials, and the AD at Mississippi Gulf Coast said, "You got to call Thomas Miller." I was like, "Who's Thomas Miller?" Like, "He's the guy. If you want officials in Mississippi, you got to go through Thomas." So that's how we got put together.
Well, Sam, not many people know that the Mississippi JUCO officials actually had a role in putting the rules together for the XFL. I mean, when you look at it, we helped you kind of put the mechanics in place, right?
Yeah, I was talking to a lot of people about this. I was at a conference explaining some of the biggest rules came from working with you guys. Right. Because I wish I remembered everyone's name, but one of the officials, when I started asking questions about what would you guys do to change, because we were all up in Gulf Coast room before the mock game, and we were like, "What would you guys do?" And they were like, "No one's ever asked us." And when you think about it, officials have watched more football and know more about the game than anyone else. It's a different lens than coaches or players, but no one's watched more football with the intent of understanding football better than officials. And that was new for me, right?
Yeah.
And I never worked with officials. I was a habitual rule breaker when I played football.
Sure. We all were.
Right. But it was really interesting. And then working with you, we had like basic PowerPoint decks about the kind of how my brain works is like, what are the overall mechanics and accomplishments the rules change supposed to make? But then you were involved in creating okay, where's the actual side judge going to be the line judge? Our kickoff, you put the entire officiating mechanics in place to make sure that we could actually get it to the spot where officials could actually officiate it, right? There's a difference between me taking this concept of moving everyone from the minus side of the field to the plus side of the field, but really being able, how do we officiate it? That was all down to you guys at the JUCOs in Mississippi.
Just so everybody knows, Sam and his crew were there. We had a crew for really 2 or 3 days that we hammered this out, and then several over different places they don't foul. But that was kind of the start of you guys getting the rules set and mechanics and officiating, end of the set.
Yeah, it was the first time we ever saw. Yeah, it was the first time we ever saw our rules in real life, and we were like, everyone was asking me like, "What do you think is going to happen?" I was like, "I have no idea. Like, this is all kind of brand new stuff." And it was awesome having you guys there and being able to actually learn from officials. I'll tell one more story from there. Is at the time we were looking about how do we get rid of the chain gang, right? It's something. The first thing you ask people is like, how do you get rid of the chain gang? Why do we measure it with chains? And so I'm spending time with technology people in the lab trying to figure out, okay, how do I do this? I have to put a chip in the ball, but then the chip's got to be in the middle of the ball for counterbalance. All this stuff, it's going to cost maybe $1 million per stadium to put something in. And I talked to you guys, and one of the officials was like, why don't you just start the ball every set of downs on a new yard line?
Right.
And I was like, he was like, yeah, just move up to the nearest yard line. That way you're always measuring on yard line. You never actually have to use chains because it's always going to be 10 yards from that yard line. I was like, that is the perfect solve. That was it. And high school football's been doing that for years, and there's different areas doing that. And it really, I think we had 3 measurements in 20 games.
Well, you notice that even in our college games today, we very rarely put the ball that's not on the line. Some situation might, and you'll see, as opposed to years ago, how many measurements they had. Very few now. And of course, a lot of that has to do with how the fields are lined, too. But still, we encourage our officials to put the ball on the line.
I think in 99% of the games I have worked, I think every single one of them in a pregame, we always say, set a new set of downs, start the ball on the line, because we ain't measuring. We just ain't going to do it.
Right.
I mean, if you do that, measuring takes up it's just wasted time.
And from my perspective,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, from my perspective is I was trying to make fans feel like they were watching legitimate, real football that was making the game better, right? And there's nothing more illegitimate in people's minds than the chain measurement, right? I don't understand it because every single thing is subjective on when the guy is down throughout the entire game, and so it's fine, like to me. And 10-yard chain is always going to be 10 yards. It's not really, you can't really change it that much, But I wanted to try and figure out, hey, how do I minimize this thing that people in the NFL they don't like? How do I make sure I either fix it or don't have it? And then there was that don't have it moment with you guys down in the JUCOs.
Well, okay, Sam. So after you did our thing, and I know I went to Jacksonville and Austin at one point with you. After all that came together, how was it getting the coaches and the players to adapt to those, new rules, so to speak? I'm assuming they liked them. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So coaches and players are a little bit different in how you approach it. So here's how I approached it. Everybody who's ever coached football knows that their main job is to push their players as far as they can go, right? And by that, I mean, you don't want to push them further than they can go, or don't ask them to do something they can't do. What can they actually execute on? But you're going to get them in a little bit uncomfortable situations, right? And so that's my relationship with coaches. And coaches don't like to be players. They want to be coaches. And so it was a little bit harder for me to get the coaches on board with some of the changes. The play clock that we talked about beforehand was, our play clock was 25 seconds to start on ball spot. When we tested with you guys first in Mississippi, it was 25 seconds flat, and we were going to have about 10 delay games a game. So, we had to change it to on ball spot, and that's where our first ever ball spotter is on the call right now. And,
Yeah, that's right.
We had the designated ball spotter that could put it in. Well, the coaches didn't want to go fast. We hired a lot of pro coaches. I could have hired the coaches from Pearl River and Mississippi Gulf Coast, and they would have gone fast because that's just what they do. But we hired a bunch of pro coaches, and so to get them to go fast was a lot more difficult. But I had to figure out what tempo could they actually go that we could get away with. So I pushed them. You're going to have to change how you call plays. I'm going to give you technology for you to be able to talk to all your players at one time, so you don't have to go chase people for subs. You don't have to chase people for different things you don't have to get a huddle, right? Different things that we can make it so it's easier for the officials or for the players to work. And the coach would push back on everything. It did not matter if it was making the game better at the start. Almost every coach pushed back on everything because they got great at a game, and now they are nervous about changing that. After time, though, when they when they saw how committed we were to listening to them and testing the rules, and when things didn't work, we didn't keep it in. So we tested a punt halo rule with you guys in Mississippi. That rule is never going to make it in, right? We were going to have a penalty on every play. It was too hard to teach the players. You don't want to teach the players to slow down. You want to teach the players when to go fast. And that's what we learned. And so we changed the rule when we got to California. So we tested the rule 6 separate times. And when we got to California, we figured we're not going to stop them at the end of the play. We're going to stop them at the start of the play. So like in college football, everyone can release at the start of the snap. And then in NFL, only the end man line of scrimmage can release at the start of the snap. And then everyone else can leave when the ball's kicked. We just changed it to everyone leaving the ball's kicked. And so we made it so that we manufactured distance between to make it a safer play. And so you didn't need to see as many fair catches. And it was worse for the punting team. So we were going to see fewer punts. So it was all these different things that we had when the coaches saw that we tested the rules and we worked with them, and that we weren't going to put something in just because we wanted it, but because it had to work. That I think that got them on board. Another thing with players is players were really funny. They only wanted to make it so that you tell me what to do so I can get a job in the NFL, right? That's why 99% of our players are in our league, was they want to play in the NFL. And so as long as showcase skills. So kickers and punters probably most upset because kickers couldn't show off. They can kick as many touchbacks. When we got rid of the extra point after a touchdown, made it a 1.2 point, 3-point try. Scrimmage play, and then the punters were upset because we made it harder for the punt team, right? And I was like, well, if you guys can kick in our game, then you could definitely kick in the NFL game because our game's the hardest game to kick in, right? And I'll tell every scout that comes and watches you, and that got them on board. I also didn't have PSI restrictions on my footballs. I let them kick with the balls they had from practice. So you can kick a 58-yard field goal in our league and then go to the NFL and you can miss 3 field goals, but you were complaining about my football beforehand. Well, I got you your own personal football. And then probably the last one that was really funny was in overtime. We were doing that conversion tries, and we weren't going to let the
we went back and forth with that with y'all. I know
that was a tough one. So we'll talk about the overtime real quick. So I really wanted to I had 3 main things I needed to solve for it. Amount of time in the game, because I needed to get the game under 3 hours. Fairness, I needed to be fair for the team that went first or second when it's not in college football. And then I needed both teams to touch the ball, right? And so, those are 3 big things. And I couldn't make the game more dangerous, right? And so, you can't extend the game anymore. So I wanted to minimize plays. So I thought, for timing's sake, so we were going to do a 2-point conversion shootout like that. College football does up to 3 overtimes now. And I wanted to put it on separate sides of the field because no one really plays both offense and defense. So let's put it on separate sides of the field. And this is great in my head, but when I start talking to an official, it's like, well, how the hell are we going to officiate this thing? And so I think the first time we did it, it was in Jacksonville, and the back judge was on, the goal line, and he ran across the field and did a 120-yard run. And so then I was like, wait, why are you running? I was like, well, I'm the back judge. I'm the back judge side. It's like, why can't you just switch positions and run 65 yards, right? And so we had the 8-man crew running, and then finally, I think you were one that said, well, what if we did traditional 4-man crews, like the original 4-man crews?
Yeah, we tried that.
And did half line. And I really liked that because I was able to get a period of overtime. So it was like rounds. We had 5 rounds, and I could get one done in 30 seconds because I'd start the play. We'd have a play, and I'd start the next play at the end of the previous play, right? And it was going great. So I could have 5 rounds of overtime done in a minute and a half, right? Great. Well, or 2.5 minutes. Well, we got to Austin, and the official and the TV was like, "You're going too fast." I go, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, we want you to go faster to get under 3 hours, but we don't want you to go too fast." I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" Like, so we had to pause for 20 seconds between the plays, anyways, right? Because they wanted to make sure they could set up their replay. They wanted to be able to show the cool play if we needed time for officiating to be able to see if it's a touchdown or not. Okay, that makes sense. And then Dean comes and sees it, and he's like, yeah, like how are we going to measure the yard line, the line of scrimmage, and the goal line, right? One guy has to mark both. And then I think you brought up, how do we watch all 5 eligibles?
Right.
Because we only have 4 people on either side of the field.
Right.
And then it was one of those things where I said, all right, fine, screw it. We'll do it on one side of the field. And that's where, like, I really wanted something. I wanted it to be a great experience. I wanted it to be brand new. And just because it looked cool, and it was cool when we tested it, in a real game, these are all scoring plays. They're all the most important play in the game. You can't have it be a poorly officiated. I was just going to say, let's the sky judge and every camera do everything.
Right.
But it can't work out that way.
But you ended up with an innovative process that nobody was using, and some people are kind of adopting it, as we go forward.
Yeah, that's and that's what's kind of nice is there's a lot of rules that are going to be that have other leagues have taken from us, and I think that things like our kickoff will end up being in the NFL at some point. It's exciting to see the work that you guys did with me and the work that my team did help and make the game of football better and safer.
And so what rules that y'all had either have been used in other leagues, or some of them might have been modified and moved on? So what are some rules that have kind of been innovative for the game of football?
Yeah, so the rules being used right now is our 2-point conversion shootout for overtime. That's being used in the USFL. The double forward pass is being used in the USFL. I don't know how many teams have done it, but we wanted to incentivize more trick plays in our game. And the reason why teams don't run double passes is because that first pass has to be a lateral, so that's a risky play. And so we wanted to make it so, okay, you can now have more innovation on it. When we tested it down with you guys, it was really funny. We called it the unlimited forward pass because we were saying, okay, you can have as many forward passes behind the line of scrimmage. But then one of the Pearl River teams, and we didn't have the clock stopping off after incompletes. One of the Pearl River teams, to end a 2-minute period, they were leading. They got in punt formation, and they snapped the ball back, and they kept passing it to each other up the field, and then they threw it as high as they could out of bounds to run as much clock out because it was the same as a kneel down. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work. This is not going to – let's give you one, and we have to stop the clock on incomplete.
It's funny how coaches will get innovative with anything,
I'll tell you, those coaches in the JUCOs were so much more innovative than any coach I've been around. Coach Kevin Kelly, too. Kevin Kelly was really helpful, coach out of Arkansas and Pulaski Academy. He was amazing to work with. But the coaches, they were so excited. Coach Agee down at Gulf Coast. He was a PhD student. He was just working on stuff. And I remember, we're always going to psychology of 1 point, 2 point, or 3 point play. And I asked Coach, why'd you choose to go for 3? And he goes, when the hell else am I going to go for 3? I got to go for they were having fun with it. And that, at the end of the day, is what football's all about,
Right.
is having fun. And that's another thing. The USFL took our 1 point, 2 point, 3 point play. They kept the 1 point kick in, and that has limited the amount of 3 point plays they have seen, and eliminated the 2 point plays they've seen because they made it too easy for a 1 point play to happen. So
Are they doing the kickoff like you did?
they don't. No, they move the ball back to the 25 like we have it, but they don't have the players starting at the plus side of the field like we did.
Okay.
I don't want to. They have had one pretty bad injury on the kickoff, but I don't know how that's making the game safer.
Remember one of our guys that worked with you, Martin Hankins.
Yeah,
He's working in the USFL.
yeah, I love Martin.
Had a game yesterday. So he's doing that. Anyway, that was real fun to get to participate in that. And you mentioned the dinner we had that night with all of us together. Man, that was a big time there.
Yeah, we had a bunch of Yankees that had, because the office is in Stanford, Connecticut. So, no one had ever been to the Gulfport Biloxi Airport. And when we kind of got there, you were like kind of showing us around and made us feel like we were at home. And I don't know how many.
We had y'all in a cabin in the deep south, man.
Yeah.
With deer heads on the wall.
One of our guys asked, "Hey, so what's the address?" And you're like, "Oh, we don't have one of those."
Yeah, that's right. Just follow us.
Just follow. Yeah. And some guys like, "Are you sure we want to do this?" I was like, "It's Thomas. Relax. Like, it's gonna be fun."
So, do you still have the yellow? You remember we had the yellow.
We had the oak, the mossy oak flags. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have it here somewhere. I'm gonna send a picture of it to you.
Yeah.
We autographed it.
Right.
We were looking for soccer flags.
Orange.
Mossy oak vest.
That's right.
So we were looking how are we going to signal the kickoff, right?
Right.
And so I went to Walmart, which was great because our hotel was at Howard Johnson, and right next to it was Walmart, and it was on Walmart Drive.
Yeah.
Right? And so everyone got a kick out of Walmart being on Walmart Drive.
Yeah.
And
that's Wiggins.
That's Wiggins in Wiggins, Mississippi. And we get there, and there's no soccer flags, but we found this hunting section, and so we got this mossy oak vests to signal when to wave it down, and then everyone signed the mossy oak vest.
That was great.
The officials did. So I have it somewhere. It's
a piece of XFL lore.
Yep.
So Sam, moving forward, I know the XFL is coming back, or let me go back to that. You guys, when you first started actually playing, were having pretty good success. I mean, do you think the pandemic just took you out, and that's what really caused the demise?
Yeah, we were doing really well. We were hitting every television metric number that we wanted to hit. Our attendance numbers were doing well. There was areas that we knew that we weren't going to do well with attendance year one, but we were building. And what was exciting was we were hitting all of our success metrics on our games. Our games were having around 50 total points scored. We were having fewer penalties in our games. We were at 2 hours and 50 minutes, which our predictive model had us around 247. And everything was hitting. And more importantly, fans loved every new rule, right? We had a 95% approval rating on our rules. And if you get a 95% approval rating, you're doing pretty damn good.
Right.
And people loved our game. Just the pandemic came and it took us out. I feel fortunate enough that we actually got to see it on TV. So I'm trying to find the silver lining and everything. And it was good enough for someone to want to buy it for $15 million. So that note, I know, like, hey, there was some value with what we had built
Right.
with that
There
team.
wasn't any discussion about starting back next year. The opportunities came up
Because of so much uncertainty, right? So when we shut down, we played our last game March 6th of 2020, and then I think we shut down April 10th. When we shut down, COVID was killing 4% of people, right? And we didn't know how to treat it. We didn't have anything in sight. And so, if you lose 4% of the U.S. population, that seems – so the outlook was so bad. At the time, because Vince McMahon, owner or CEO and chairman of WWE, he was one funding it. The stock had plummeted probably about 60%. And so he needed to focus. His board was like, you can't focus on this football thing. And there's uncertainty there if you guys will ever be able to play. But, I was putting together models for playing in the fall and playing in the summer if we could get into a space. I'd put together my first ever model was very similar to what they're doing in Birmingham right now. So the first ever model I built for Vince was a centralized bubble hub model because I was trying to cut costs as much as possible. And then I had a modified bubble model, which was you do all your training and workouts in the same location, but then you fly on the same plane, 2 teams to the same location because you have to pay for a charter plane anyways. And so there was different bubble models we had established to try and keep the COVID exposure, down to a minimum. But, the problem is every state was so different. That's why the SEC could play a full schedule. And, if the SEC wasn't going to, if the SEC didn't play, then the Big Ten and the Pac-12 would have never played. NFL has too much TV money on the line to not play. So, it was just harder for, startup leagues to be able to get going.
Right. Well, do you foresee yourself ever working with a football league again down the road?
Yeah, I never say no to any opportunities. I think there's a lot of great football leagues out there, the CFL, the FCF, that are all doing unique things outside of the XFL and the USFL. And I think, by the USFL taking a few of my rules, I know that they clearly like my work.
They know who you are.
They know who I am. I work with them all at Fox. They even did a word for word taking of our videos. So they even like my sales strategy, not just my product. So I think at some point it would be great to work with them. I love working with the television partners. So there's a lot of networks that I will help work with and help explain the game in a little bit different way and kind of showcase different things that you can do differently on the network and how to use data in those discussions. So there's a lot of different networks as well that I think can help make the game interesting. Because like talking with you guys, talking with fans, I think that was probably my thing that I did most was I just tried to listen to fans and listen to people and see what they have and what issues do they have. If there's too much data being put into football that they don't understand, it's like, how do you make it consumable for people, right? How do we make this fun for people? How do I help make you better at fantasy football and gambling? How do I make you a better football fan, right? A lot of what we did, I stole the word edutainment, right? I wanted to make our football fans better football fans. That's why we did the play calls over the air. That's why we let you hear the decision-making process through replay, is because we wanted our football fans, who are the most rabid football fans, of the 185 million football fans in this country, 38 million wanted more football. Those are the people who are going to watch our game. And so if you really love football, I want to make you a better football fan. So that's really what I'm passionate about, and making the game safer and more exciting for players as well.
So Blake, anything else you want to ask?
Yeah, what was, looking back on the XFL, what was like the number one thing that you think was a success? What were you most proud of that you kind of implemented or had your hand in? I mean, obviously, things you think a lot was a success, but what was one thing that might have stood out?
I think probably the thing that I liked the most was the kickoff, because it was the most radically different. And I really think it can help save the game of football, right? Like the way that it's going right now, there's a lot of people that are forcing the kickoff out of the game, right? And I would love for the kickoff to be part of the game. And I think that our kickoff, having 0 injuries, keeping the foot in football, making the game exciting. I think that was it. I think overall, the fact that people had fun at our games, you know, like freaking, we sold out a beer at every one of our games. You know, I don't know if that's our marketing team or our beer provider was that the problem, but supply chain issues from COVID maybe. But we sold out a beer at every game, and so that was huge. As a show, our fans actually gave a shit about our games. Or I'm sorry for cursing, but they loved our game and loved coming to our game. So that to me was my number one.
First time that's happened on this podcast. So, Sam, this is kind of a different topic that we didn't address, but I mean, you're a college athlete. What's your take on the NIL situation? What do you think about that and the transfer portal?
Yeah, so I've been talking about this for years, and what people don't understand is everything works in systems, right? I'm not trying to be like a quantum physics person, say a butterfly flaps its wings in Minnesota and an avalanche happens in the Andes Mountains. I'm not saying that, but every single change that you make affects other parts of the world, other parts of your system. So when they opened up the transfer portal, that to me became an issue if they ever came up with a name, image, likeness, because now you have free agency with no tied-in contract. After a year, you have free agency every single year. And so you combine that with name, image, likeness to where, could you imagine if every player in the draft could renegotiate after year one? But the team couldn't really get rid of every player because the problem is you can't cut players right now. And so the team can't get rid of you, but you can choose to go somewhere else. So player has all the leverage. And what's great as a capitalist is the player can go for more money in college than players in the NFL draft. The NFL, you get slotted with your draft pick and how much money you make, versus this is an open market and in college football with name, image, likeness. So you can go and you can make as much money as you want, and you get to pick where you go. And there's more places to pick. There's only 32 teams. If you want to live in LA, you can go to or in Southern California, you go to San Diego State, USC, UCLA. You can go so many different places. And if you're a good enough player, they'll want you. And so because transfer portal combined with name, image, likeness, that's where we have this weird auto free agency. As a capitalist, I love it, right? I love to be able to see what players are actually worth in the open market, and let's get a true value. I really don't like salary caps. That's why we didn't have one. It's like, let's just get the best players in the best spot, right? I find though that what could happen is this, as teams get discouraged by what's happening on their fields, there might be teams dropping football that can't compete at a high level. And that's the thing that scares me, is the number one way to get out of poverty in this country is to get an education. And football provides more education, more free education than any other platform, right? And so pulling a lot of people out of poverty is important to me. I'm a first-generation college student. I had good grades. I would have never gotten to Stanford without football. And I'm so thankful for the life I have because of football. Stanford's a little bit different because my value was worth over $3 million. My scholarship was worth over $3 million based on how much people used to pay under the table to get into the school here, right? You know, that varsity blues. So versus maybe a state school that may cost less amount of money. But I think that there's an opportunity for players to make as much money as they want. I'm happy for them, but we lose a little bit of the game that we had before. But you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
You know,
we talk about that. We talk about that when replay in football. I mean, I think replay is a good thing, but we've opened it up so much now that you can't rail it back in. You know, and I think in a lot of cases we're too far out. We've gone too far with it, and it's kind of similar with the traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm for it, but I'm like you. There's got to be some tightening up of the screw there
Now here's the interesting one, right? Now you have an open market in college football right now. You don't have salary caps. What if they got rid of eligibility?
Yeah.
Right? So what if Tim Tebow could have just played at Florida forever? You play a lower competition. The game in NFL is not the game that would work for him, but Tim Tebow was maybe the best college football player ever, right? But the game is just different in college than it is in the NFL. What if he just stayed in college forever? He could actually probably have earned more money in college football than he could have ever earned playing in the pros. So it's actually because all the rules in college football are made up, right? Name, image, likeness, that was a made-up rule. Transfer, that was made up. So all these can be changed. So if a player's like, I'm still continuing my degree, why can't I play football? I'm still a student.
Yeah.
Right? As long as they're going to classes, which now we have online classes, and even Johnny Manziel didn't even go to in-person classes last year because he was too much of a distraction. So why can't these guys stay in school forever, and they could earn more than NFL players as long as the schools are willing to pay them? That to me would be really interesting. And you can never say never, because when I was playing, who thought name, image, likeness was going to get rid of? The O'Bannon case hadn't been solved yet for college, the NCAA video game. Who's to say eligibility doesn't go away either, and guys can stay in college longer and make more money than they would make in the NFL?
Yeah. That's interesting. Mike, anything else for Sam?
Yeah, not much. I mean, we remember, Dad, we were talking about all the Ole Miss players the other day. Matt Corral, he would have made more money if he just stayed at Ole Miss.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, and Jerrion Ely, the running back, didn't even get drafted.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he would have made a lot more money at Ole Miss. So
here's another interesting one: is what if Bryce Young had entered the transfer portal after the national championship, right? And the problem is he could still end up back at Alabama, but now everyone always knows you negotiate when you have another contract in hand.
Yep.
Right.
That's
right.
what happened. So with Jackson Dart, that was at USC, that now is at Ole Miss. His value, when he entered the portal, his value shot through the roof after however long it was, a month, 2 weeks in the portal.
Because that's what we call supply and demand, Coach. That's what America's built on.
Well, one thing I think too, Sam, is the transfer portal. Some of the guys getting left behind are JUCO guys and high school guys, because the coaches are now, instead of recruiting the JUCO guy or high school guy, they're recruiting the portal, and it's I think that's hurt some of their chances.
And they have to recruit their own guys.
Right.
So that's the big problem with college football is, it also is our best breeding ground for new innovative ideas and coaches, right? So high school is probably a little more innovative because you have to be, but you get more time in college. So a lot of cool innovations come out of college football. Well, there are going to be a lot of people choosing not to coach college football right now because, like you said, you're recruiting high school, you're recruiting JUCO, you're recruiting other schools, and you have to recruit your own guys every year to stay.
Every day.
So now, every day you're recruiting them, right? And so when I was at Stanford, it was a year-to-year scholarship, and they could get rid of me after a year, and it didn't matter. Now, and then by my third year, they changed it to where when you signed, it was signed for all 4 years, right? And the only optional year was fifth year. So now, okay, they can be mean to me, but I get to still stay at this school. Now, I don't know how you can coach a player hard, other than if you're Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, because you've proven you can win a championship, right? Every other coach, and then because those coaches have already won championships, and if they keep winning them, you don't get the other coaches who have the same rapport to be able to maintain those players, right? And so by them hoarding all the championships, you have because you met with Todd Dodge. Coach Dodge, we didn't lose a game for 3 years. He could have said anything to us, and we would have believed him, and it was gospel, right? Versus when you have an unknown coach, the players are feeling out that coach too. What do you know? You haven't done anything either, right? And so when you have a winning coach, it's stupid, but winning begets winning. The more you win, and so that to me is, it's going to make this really hard. And what I really don't want, the number one thing I don't want is I want as many schools to play football as possible. I don't want there to be fewer schools playing football and fewer schools offering scholarships, because that's when the people shouting for player rights, and I'm a player, so I have player rights, and like make sure they get everything they want. Well, if we consolidate down to 32 college football teams in the next 10 years, which is entirely possible, that we just make college football like a different version of the pros, a minor league, then we've kind of ruined what was great about football, which was giving out these scholarships to players. Because guess what? These players might have to start paying taxes. My scholarship at Stanford was $70,000. If I had to pay taxes on that, I would have to earn $150 to be able to pay for that scholarship. Right. And so, like, come on, man. Like, you're getting something pretty amazing. Not saying that they shouldn't be able to make money off their name, image, likeness. I'm not saying that, but when you combine it with the transfer portal, that's when it starts to get a little bit scary.
Well, Sam, do you have a website or social media where anybody can follow you or follow along?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to keep up. Tell us what that is.
Follow me on Twitter at Schwartzstien S. So SCHWARTZSTEINS. And then reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to do some work together. Right. I always love working with people, talking with people. So my LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com/Sam-Schwartzstien. Okay.
Well, great. Well, Sam, we appreciate you taking time to chop it up with us a little bit today. I know, you're a bright guy and an up and coming guy. I really look forward to seeing what's next. And I know you're going to keep us up on that. See where you go from here. We knew you way back.
It's always great talking to you guys. I mean, like, the memories I have from the XFL, the best times are on the field, and you guys were there, right? Yeah. I mean, like, Jacksonville was crazy, right?
Yeah.
We know what happened there.
That's where my leg burst open.
Yeah, you were sitting in that chair, and we were like, "What's?" And you're like, "Yeah." So I got some old pictures from that.
Yeah. Anyway,
great time.
You'll come back to the SIP sometime and stay a while.
Yeah, I'll have some burgers.
Yeah.
We need to get them up to Oxford. You need to come to Ole Miss experience
game.
Yeah.
We might have some time to do that this year. Let's do that.
Just, hook us up in the fall. We'll get you up there.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Okay. Sam, thanks a lot. Have a good day.